Tally Hawk! The Silverhawks figures are finally here. Let's review them.
It's morphin' time.
Wings of silver, birds of steel.
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome to my review of Silverhawks Ultimates Wave 2 from Super 7. You didn't miss anything. Wave 1 hasn't come out yet. It got delayed due to production reasons. Wave 2 made it out first. Wave 1 will come out in May. So check out my playlist on the Thundercats reviews if you haven't seen them. These follow the similar structure of their made-to-order, but they're available at other retailers. You can pretty much pick these guys up still at most stores at the time of recording. So if you are looking for any of these, go take a look at your local online retailer. But in general, these are sort of limited run figures because they are not a mass-produced line. And in general, the price points reflect that. And you'll see the price points on the screen as well. On top of that, this wave is 4 figures plus a chair, so it's kind of funny. It's a 5-piece wave in the end. We're going to look at each figure one at a time. We'll go from Bluegrass to Steelwill to Windhammer to Mon Star to the chair. And if you want to skip to any part of that, there is chapter times in the description. So let's begin with Silverhawks Wave 2 and see if the wait was worth it. All right, so we're starting off with Bluegrass. Now, Bluegrass is a pretty cool character, but let's talk about this packaging. So as you can see, there is a shiny, reflective, you can see me, hi, how's it going? You can see my lovely camera. But yeah, this is a very reflective box. You got the embossed Silverhawks logo on the back, the actual, emblem here. This is just, I think, to kind of replicate how the original vintage toys had that vac metal effect to them. They did that for the packaging. And there is Bluegrass. So these are based on the animated looks specifically. They don't seem to have too much redesigning like how the Thundercats are slightly redesigned for the animated looks. These look really spot on to the animation, but you can see that Bluegrass comes with a ton of accessories, which we'll go over. But you can see Silverhawks Bluegrass there. On the back, you get kind of a silhouette of him. And then, of course, you got the bio. Bluegrass, Silverhawks Colonel. Bluegrass is a human law enforcement officer modified into a cyborg to withstand the effects of hypertravel through space. This grants him enhanced strength, agility, and speed. He has a hawk-like faceplate that protects him during tough situations. Unlike the other Silverhawks, Bluegrass's bionic hardware includes no built-in weapons or wings, and he once complained that he would one day have to learn to fly without his ship, the Mirage. Instead of built-in lasers, he uses a guitar called Hot Licks as both a piloting aid and his weapon, firing blue energy notes. So yes, he is the pilot of the team, and he looks really, really cool. So let's get into Bluegrass. All right, so here we have Bluegrass. Now, of course, being our first Silverhawk after all this time, we've been waiting for these figures for a couple years now at this point. These are supposed to be out in 2022. Hey, did not come out till 2023. The biggest reason cited was that they're trying to get the paint right. Because these are based on the animation, they're not going to be vac metallized chrome like the original Kenner toys. These are meant to match the animated look, and I think they do that well. Now, in the animation, they do have kind of a metallic sheen to the models, and I think that's what they were going for here without being like super metallic painted. It looks nice. I know that, toy making is not an easy business. For me personally, there's nothing that's like blowing me away like on first look of, having these, and I've had them open for, a few hours now. I've been looking at them and I'm like, it looks nice. I don't know how, I don't know if the delay was necessarily worth it for the paint, but it does look nice. But I don't know exactly, what part of the process and how long, what they looked like originally in the hand-painted samples. But apparently paint testing was a big factor to the delay. And yeah, he turned out good. I think as a consumer, I kind of look at it and go, oh, well, did it take that long to get this? It doesn't seem, that special. You can remove his cool cowboy hat if you want. Boom, there we go. I think the faces turned out good on these. I know people were talking about like pre-production samples of Wave 1. They're like, why are the faces so flat? I don't know. Unless it's a Wave 1 thing that we'll see in May, these do look fine to me. If this is too flat for an animated looking character, then, well, I don't know what to say, because it looks fine. It's got some depth. You can see his cheeks. You can see his chin, It works for me. He does have this tendency to just be looking up, at least on this head. Like he just kind of... He's in partial eye roll mode a lot there, but you can see he's got, sculpted details. He's got the fin, the Yondu-like fin. But you can see the hat, what's pretty cool is that the hat has the ridge in it, so that way you can use it on all the heads, and you can have it a little bit lower, like this, if you want them looking like super cool, or if you want to position it back, kind of like that. It does sometimes sit a little high if you don't like squeeze it on, but you know, it's good. And yeah, let's look at, you know, we got the scarf, but overall in general, they are very simple designs. I think that's what also helps with them coming with a ton of accessories, is that they are more simplistic designs because they are those cartoon designs. They don't have like the realistic texture flourishes like the Thundercats. You can see these guys like cowboy boot look going on here, you know, the belt piece, the partly metal, partly real part of the theme song because they are cyborgs. So you can see there's the flesh arm and then the actual all metallic arm. I don't know why each Silverhawk has like one exposed flesh arm and one, you know, metal arm. It's just how they did it. It's just how they did it. But you know what? I think overall it looks good. Now, in terms of the actual articulation, there is some limitations here that are unfortunate. I'm looking at this now. This guy does capture the lights well. You can see that he actually does look reflective. So with the head joint, it is a ball joint. It doesn't look up very far. Like you can't get him into a flying pose. But that's fine because Bluegrass doesn't fly on his own. He flies the Mirage, so he's mostly going to be sitting. So that, like, you know, that works. It's not, you know, could it have had more range? Sure, for this character, not really a problem. Shoulders are ratcheted, which is really nice. We'll talk about a problem in a moment. He's got the 360 shoulders, bicep swivel, elbow bend, also detented, elbow swivel, wrist, in and out. We'll talk about the torso in a moment. Hips that move out, they move forward. They move far enough forward he could sit. They do make some version of the Mirage. A little bit of a thigh swivel, knee bend like this, a knee swivel, and then forward and backward ankle and left and right ankle, though it does run into the boot, so it's not going to get a huge bend on that. And then there is the torso. The torso features two different joints. It has this upper torso ball joint and then a straight cut waist. The straight cut waist works. This is completely useless. You can't get it to turn really all that much. It doesn't crunch forward and back. It keeps it cleaner than having like a straight cut ab crunch like the Thundercats. I got one sitting right here. So you see on like Tigra here, and even then it's not too much. But you see like the straight cut gets some range of movement back and forth. With this, why even bother? It's not like, you know, you're getting a very slight movement. It doesn't really go that far back. It doesn't really go that far forward. This doesn't do much because he just looks really weird if you pose him with his torso slightly off center. It's just a very mild rotation. I think the straight cut waist is, you know, more important. This could have just been a solid torso. I think it would have been pretty much the same effect. So kind of a weird thing with the torso. For Bluegrass, it's not too big of an issue. It might be an issue on some other characters. Now, what is an issue is, like I said, there is a lot of paint, and much like NECA's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon figures and some of their comic figures, they painted over the joint. Now, unlike the NECA figures where that prevented joints from moving, I opened this guy out of the box, bent his elbow, no problem, but you may notice that you can see the actual plastic underneath where the paint has scraped away. And so what I would have liked instead is just a plastic that sort of matched the color and then just have the paint go around and not like through the joint, because then that way it would look a little bit cleaner. Like I'm going to go in and probably clean that up, like scrape the rest of the paint out of the joint, just so it looks a little bit cleaner. On this elbow, for example, you can see the actual plastic they used underneath matches the flesh tone of his arm. So even though there's excess paint there, it doesn't look so out of place as this does. So it's just kind of a bummer. One of the bigger bummers is that out of the box, I had like this little paint scrape right there, and it was before I moved the shoulder. But moving the shoulder out doesn't help, but there was some paint there. You can see, again, just the disparity of plastic color to paint color. This is not a Super 7 unique issue. Like there's another chip there. This is, like I said, something that comes up on NECA's cartoon Ninja Turtles and their comic Ninja Turtles sometimes, where they put so much paint on the figures to match that animated look that some of the joint things get in the way. And what's interesting is on the back here, on the knees, you can see that the knees are painted over the joints, but even though I've moved them back and forth several times, it hasn't scraped out of there. So there's just more clearance for the paint to stay on the joint part. So maybe that's something that they can improve on the elbows. But outside of that, I mean, I'm pretty happy with Bluegrass as just like a base action figure. He is a little bit restrictive in the articulation, particularly on the torso, and the paint thing is kind of an annoyance more than anything. But let's look at his accessories, because that's where this figure truly shines. First things first, he does have this neutral expression head. He does have this smirk, which I think fits the character much better, honestly, and as you can see, the hat does fit on all the heads. Then he also has a wink and a smile like the musician he is. Very similar to the opening, honestly. Now, hands-wise, he's got these open hands. He has 2 fists for brawling, 2 thumbs-up hands, and he comes with 2 grip hands, which work well to hold maybe either control sticks of a possible Mirage, or you can have him holding his lasso. This thing is kind of weird. Let's talk about it separate from the figure. So this comes with, of course, comes with Bluegrass. This is a very stiff material. I just smacked him in the face. We're going to move him over there. This is a very stiff material that likes to reset to its default position. In the box, it's just kind of like squeezed in like this. And I think it looks fine. I think it looks cool. It's just the angle that it's at. I do like how, I do like how this is articulate. Like you can actually spin it. So you can change the position. This could lasso over a bad guy. But I don't know, like, if you need to heat it up just to get it repositioned, because the position it's in, it's really hard to get him to hold it in any natural way where it's not, like, accidentally roping himself. But it's kind of a fun, neat extra accessory. He also comes with this coiled up lasso, which is way more practical and a lot easier to display with. Now, he does come with more hands, but the rest of these hands go with his guitars. So let's introduce his guitars. So first up, we have Hot Licks. This is his kind of primary guitar. He uses it in the Mirage a lot. And of course, in battle, you can see it's a pretty nice piece of plastic. But it's really nicely painted and detailed. You can see the individual strings, which I think is just a really cool piece. There is a port on the end here, so you can plug in these 2 different effects. This one doesn't want to go in as well, but you can see you got kind of a nice blaster effect. Or you can do the one I kind of like a lot more, which is this, this is like straight out of the show. He's like firing a musical blast. It's actually detailed on both sides, so you could position it this way. The only problem I have is that with this, it goes over the barrel, and it kind of holds not well, and then it squeezes the barrel enough that when you go to put this one, which goes into the barrel, it kind of just warps around. Like, I'm glad the barrel's not hard plastic, but the soft plastic of it's kind of getting messed up a little bit by the effect parts. But we'll try to see if we can pose Bluegrass with either of those. Now, the fun part is you get 2 guitar straps for the 2 different guitars, and they are different lengths. So from what I can tell, the actual strap here that's the longer one is the one to go with Hot Licks, and the other shorter one goes with Sideman. I'm going to try to put this on because these holes do not seem large enough. All right, so here we have Bluegrass with Hot Licks. So we can see 2 new hands, one that is definitely for the fingers here, and then another one's a strumming hand. What's cool is you also get a kind of wider strumming hand or a holding hand of some kind. I'm not exactly sure what this is for. And then you get this other one that is a tighter grip strumming hand. He's not a pick guy, so he doesn't have a pick molded. And then he's got this, which is, I guess, just kind of like a bass holding hand. This is just 3 extra hands for the guitar modes specifically. Let's see about that effect part, because I do really like this. I haven't tested this. This is testing this live on tape from the table of Soundout12. Look at that. He actually holds it. I don't know how stable that is. Can he move? He can hold it, like, because of his articulation, stability, right? Like, and the guitar strap helps because that keeps the guitar in place. That actually works pretty good. I don't know if that's going to droop over time. This is just me testing it in a review, but honestly, that looks really, really fun. So here's the other guitar, Sideman. Now, the fun part about Sideman is, unlike Hot Licks, Sideman is not just a cool-looking guitar with a strap that I got to squeeze over these. These are actually not too hard to attach, honestly. You just kind of have to squeeze them around and push them on. I'll do it off camera. But there is Sideman unstrapped. But you may notice he's got a bird face. He's got wings because Sideman is also the Fighting Hawk paired with Bluegrass. So this is a winged version of Sideman where he's in flight, which is pretty cool. And I like that they do stand on their own. And then we have a collapsed wing version of Sideman to kind of hang out on his shoulder. It doesn't really clip to his arm. These talons are not large enough. But it's kind of cool because the original Silverhawks toy line made a big deal about having the Fighting Hawks for each character. And I'm glad that they're here because these did appear in animation as well. Now, it does look like Sideman's head should be able to turn because it does look like a cut. I haven't been able to get it to turn. It's really small and I don't want to break it. But anyways, it's kind of cool we get all three forms. They could have just done two. You know, one version of the bird, one version of the guitar. But I like that we got all the versions of Sideman. And there's Bluegrass with his buddy Sideman. And he looks pretty good too. It's kind of interesting because Sideman, I think, gives off a more bass guitar vibe than Hot Licks does. But yeah, it looks really good. And you can see I like the hand options. The thing with Bluegrass is that, you know, I like characters that use guitars in action figures. I like characters that wear cowboy hats in non-cowboy settings. So this is just, you know, winning for me in a lot of ways. Overall, I think outside of the articulation limitations, Bluegrass is pretty solid, and the accessory count is insanely impressive. And so far, the articulation hasn't impeded any poses I wanted to do, and I think that's the most important part. It's not the points of articulation, it's how they can be used. Height-wise, here's Bluegrass with his voice actor pairing from Thundercats, Lion-O, and then also his kind of character role pairing with Tigress. So you can see Bluegrass is right along the same size as the Thundercats. The Silverhawks are definitely not as bulky or beefy as the Thundercats, but that just kind of fits the overall aesthetics. But you can see where these are more kind of updated cartoon designs, especially Lion-O. Silverhawks is definitely more in the straight cartoon look. Next, we're going to take a look at the other Silverhawk in the wave, Steelwill. Same outer cover here, but here is Steelwill, and he is huge. Steelwill is a football player, so, you know, he's really big. He is the brother to Steelheart. She's in wave 1, which I guess is now going to be our second wave we'll get. But overall, here he is. And then on the back, you got the nice artwork of him. Steelwill, Silverhawk Sergeant. Steelwill is a human law enforcement officer modified into a cyborg to withstand the effects of hypertravel through space. This grants him enhanced strength, agility, and speed. Unique among the Silverhawks, his faceplate is a football helmet, unlike the hawk-like covers of his teammates. He has a built-in wings for atmospheric and space flight, as well as being shown to have a built-in fire extinguisher. For combat, he has built-in lasers within his arm and retractable talons in his feet for attacking while flying. He and his sister Steelheart have an enhanced psychic bond, enabling communication from vast distances. So let's take a look at Steelwill. So here we have Steelwill. Now Steelwill is the brother and the brother-sister duo Steelwill and Steelheart, and he's pretty cool. I like that he has a different body shape. That's the nice part about Silverhawks. They could have all been kind of like the same body type. But yeah, actual Steelwill here is pretty chunky. He's pretty beefy. Like he's super football player status kind of guy. Once again, just like with Bluegrass, I think the paint looks good. I mean, it looks really nice. I like the shading. I like the way that, you know, the reflectiveness to it. One thing you may notice is he's got kind of a wobble going on. It's because of this stupid upper ball joint thing. All right, so when I said Bluegrass's was completely useless for that upper torso ball joint, I forgot that Steelwill's actually does nothing. There is just make this a solid torso at this point. There was no point to adding a ball joint up here because I think it's partly because of his body mass, but like he can't move. There's no point to this joint. Waist joint, sure, that works fine. Head design wise, look at him. He looks nice. Once again, the one flesh arm, the one metal arm, that kind of thing. The legs are pretty symmetrical outside of this band on the one leg. But yeah, I mean, he looks pretty good. He actually doesn't have the paint flake issue as bad as Bluegrass did. So first of all, articulation, we got ball joint head. This moves way more, and most importantly, it looks up. He needs to because when you get into the flying position, as we'll look at soon, he is one of the Silverhawks who flies. Bluegrass doesn't. So Bluegrass doesn't need to look up. He needs to look up, especially if, you know, again, I'm going with hypotheticals here. If they were to hypothetically make the Mirage, he would be in the Mirage like that. So it looks right. Like if you have this go up any farther, it's going to look unnatural. That looks like a proper flying position. So it is smart. It is smart engineering. It's not restricted because of the design. They actually worked around it. So this is what bugs me sometimes. And this is no insult to the designers of these figures. I think they do a great job. But when you have this, like very, you know, intent, this is a natural forward head position, and then there's a torso ball joint that does absolutely nothing. This is why it just gets sometimes a little frustrating as a collector, because I'm like, oh, this is brilliantly engineered, and then this is completely pointless. But anyways, onto the shoulders, 360, outward, usual stuff. Bicep swivel's also kind of useless, but I think that's due to his, like, bicep size. Elbow swivel's a little bit more useful. in and out, wrist swivel, hips that move out, forward, back. They actually do squeeze back. His butt does move. Thigh swivel, a knee bend, knee swivel, ankle bend, forward, back. Now, could the legs have a little bit more movement? Probably. Do I need them to? No, because a lot of Silverhawks are in flying positions like this. Overall, I don't think there's anything. I think just like with Bluegrass, there's nothing that really is holding him back outside of like the torso joint. Just being there and not doing anything is kind of annoying. But in general, I think that overall Steelwill is pretty solid. The only problem I have with him, and the only problem I have with him really, is his ankles. His ankles are a little loosey-goosey, and so they slide a bit. So if you don't position him just right, he's gonna topple right over. But otherwise, he's good to go. So as we showed, he does have a neutral expression. His second head has an open mouth, which has a smile, but also looks like he's in mid-conversation, which is kind of a neat diorama idea. And then we get his armored head. What's interesting about Steelwill's armored head is a lot of the Silverhawks, when they go to fly, they'll do this, which is kind of cool, actually. I realize the Articulation can do this. They flip their hand in front of their face, and then spoiling a gimmick there, hand in front of the face, and then the visor flips down. With Steelwill, he actually goes from having like this kind of head to a whole football helmet wrapping around in addition to the faceplate. So it gives him a really cool, distinctive look. Now he does come with 2 relaxed hands. He comes with 2 fists. He comes with 2 circular holding hands, which I don't think actually hold anything he comes with. It's almost like they're future-proofing in case they get to do the Mirage. And then he has 2 grip hands with trigger fingers, which actually correlate to other accessories. Accessories like the Steamer Blaster. This is pretty cool because, you know, Steelwill mostly just punches things, but he did have a couple different blaster weapons, like the Steamer Blaster, which has a cool effect piece that just plugs right in. Super easy. That's a general thing that the Silverhawks figures, everything just swaps easy. I haven't had to heat up anything to move something. So always be careful, but for me in general, these have been very, like, kind of plug and play. So there he is holding the Steamer Blaster. I like the effect. I like the addition of effects with these figures. And then here is the Screamer Blaster, which this is in its, like, actual screaming blaster form, but you can swap this out. I do like how it's just a straight peg. It's a straight circular peg with a flat side to it, so it's not, like, trying to over-tighten everything. But you can have it with the closed mouth, like it's charging up, or you can have it with the open mouth. This is some of the goofy weaponry that the Silverhawks sometimes got, and it's just beautiful. And of course, there is Steelwill holding the Screamer Blaster. Now, a question going into these figures that I and many others had was, how are the wings going to work? And the way they did them was, instead of having the wings swap onto the arms, you just get another set of arms. Now, these arms do have a actual bicep swivel. Much like with the normal arms on Steelwill, they're not going to move much, but they do have an in and out joint movement. Here and there, which is pretty good. They also have these blaster holes, which we'll talk about in a moment. They also come packed without any hands on, so what you do is you just plug in your hands of choice, which also means if you don't want just like the extended hands and you wanted them to have like the open hands, they all work in these sockets. So that's the nice part, is that it actually is interchangeable. You can give it the display options you want. And then the thing I was worried about, because you can see how tight the hands go in. How are these shoulder pegs going to work? And well, surprisingly really good. They just pop right out. They're fairly sturdy, but like you noticed when I was kind of posing them earlier, the arm did come out. The only thing I'm worried about is, why are the joints clear plastic? They're not the joint per se. It's just the like locking mechanism, like when you plug the arm in and then it rotates on that. I don't know if that made it easier to swap out without them getting like stuck in the torso. I just don't like seeing clear plastic on pretty much anything, so especially joints. But once you get these plugged in, you can see this actually works out pretty good. So it does line up with the body, and you do have to do some positioning. If you want it like snug and fit really close up to the body, you can. But like I said, you can actually get his head up, and then boom, there you go. There's your flying Steelwill as an Ultimates figure. That actually, you know, I thought it was going to be like a painful experience getting the wing arms put in or swapped over, but it's actually pretty good. And I think outside of like that torso ball joint here and like some of the, you know, the legs being heavy, if you get this thing on the right kind of stand, or if you want to suspend them from the ceiling, you can totally do that. I think that's totally a viable display option, which is great, because I think that's one of the more iconic parts of Silverhawks was the way that they, you know, they'd crunch their arms to their body and pull out the wings in addition to the face plates. I think that just looks really good. You know, I think you always had a tweak and adjust because it's an articulated figure, but I think it works. It works for me, at least. I'll put it that way. Now, the other cool part is they do have the shoulder lasers in the actual shoulders here. You can see the shoulder lasers are exposed. Now, sometimes they would use the shoulder lasers without the wings open, and that is not doable on this figure just because I think they wanted the clean shoulders with the normal shoulders, but you can attach two effect parts into the shoulder laser sockets here, and then there you go. So what's kind of cool is they are little beams with a clash point out at the end. I don't know if I'm going to display them like this. As you can see, kind of trying to line up the shoulders can be a little tricky. I don't know if I'm going to display them like this, but it is totally an option. I'm glad they did replicate the shoulder lasers in some form, because that looks honestly pretty cool, especially if you have a diorama and you have him like blasting another figure. Like here's Tigra, and just, so you can kind of see the effect there. But pretty cool overall. I do think the arm swap was not as bad as I thought it would be. So here we have the Fighting Hawk companion for Steelwill, which is Stronghold. You get him with the wings folded and perched, or the wings open and flying, just like with Sideman. So what's kind of interesting, though, is that there is some mix-up as to whether Stronghold is Steelwill or Steelheart's bird. In the show, they actually used the wrong visual when they called out Stronghold and Razor, and so it's been kind of a confusing thing. The original Kenner toy did come with Stronghold with Steelwill, Razor with Steelheart, and that seems to be what they did with the Ultimates. I'm getting both either way, so it doesn't bother me too much. But it was kind of it is a confusing point, because even in show, they didn't keep it straight as to whether this was Steelwill's partner or if it was Steelheart's partner. Size-wise, here's Steelwill with Bluegrass. So you can see that Steelwill is thicker, he's beefier, but he's not, he's not as tall, I think, as Bluegrass. He's a little bit taller than Bluegrass. He is a little bit bigger. That's pretty good. And then here he is next to Slithe, who he shares a voice actor with, and Panthro, who was the kind of bruiser of the Thundercats, to match up with Steelwill. So you can see that Steelwill is pretty big. He's actually fairly large without being like overly sized. So overall, Steelwill is pretty good. I think Bluegrass has a few more options that make him a little bit more playable, but it's nice to see how the wings work, and hopefully the joints, being those clear plastic sockets, isn't a problem in the future. It's something I can't truly predict until time passes on. So next up we have Windhammer. Now Windhammer comes packaged a little different than the Silverhawks. He's got Mon Star's face in a triangle shape, which kind of parallels the Silverhawks design. And on the back you got these Silverhawks. It is still that metallic-y surface. It's just not as clear as the silver. But let's take a look. Boom! Windhammer's kind of cool. He's a weather manipulator kind of guy. Looking really awesome in here. Really huge accessories in the back, which we will take a look at. But he looks pretty cool. On the back, you got the artwork. Windhammer, the Stormmaster. Windhammer, the Stormmaster of the villainous Limbo mob, is one of Mon Star's strongest followers. With one simple strike through his giant tuning fork, he can smash any close-range target. Windhammer's greatest asset is his ability to use his tuning fork to create weather attacks anywhere in Limbo. Space tornadoes, cyclones, and blizzards are all at his command. The only thing that matches his raw power is his unwavering loyalty to Mon Star, which goes beyond a basic desire for money. One thing that's for sure, the Silverhawks better not get blown away, because Windhammer is a force of nature to be reckoned with. All right, so here is Windhammer. Pretty much, weather guy. He mostly just shows up in the series to create weather distractions for the Silverhawks. Can't say for sure that he really has too much of a character beyond that. What's really cool is they did give him this kind of nice double-sided soft goods material for his robe, which I think works pretty good. It is Velcroed on the back in case you do want to remove it. But I think it looks good. I think it works with the figure because, it doesn't have that much detail to him. He's pretty basic, bare bones guy, but he does have nearly nicely sculpted hair, really cool face details, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So articulation-wise, the head's pretty restricted. The hair is just going to restrict anything you do. Shoulders move out, they 360, the elbows bend, they rotate, the wrists pivot, swivel. There is a side-to-side waist, but if you can see, there is a upper torso ball joint that does absolutely nothing. Don't even bother at this point. Hips that move out, forward, back, knees that bend, knees that rotate, ankles that pivot left and right, forward and back, and that's pretty much it. But that will set you up for some good Windhammer poses. Now, hands-wise, he does have these sort of open grip, curled fingers hands. He has two hands with pointed fingers to point menacingly at things. He comes with two different fists, as in left and right. And then he comes with two sets of grip hands. We do want to show there is two sets of these. ones that move in and out, and ones that move up and down. That's for his giant tuning fork. And yes, this guy's whole thing is giant tuning fork to control the weather, and that's pretty much what that accessory is. There is this swooshing wind effect, which, you know what? His hair's not in the right position. I almost forgot something. Oh yeah, there we go. The alternate head with his sweeping hair. I'm never taking that head off. It's staying. He's got a great expression where he looks like he's angry. He's whipping up some wind. And yeah, you can pair the angle of the hair and the angle of the wind, because not only can he somehow put wind into space, he can put lightning into space. These are things that shouldn't exist in space. But look at that. That's freaking cool. I mean, he's going to take up a ton of space on the shelf using any of these effects, but the fact he can hold them up, that these aren't weighing him down too much, it's not warping the tuning fork, is just fantastic. Okay, the ice storm effect may be weighing him a little bit. I actually caused him to tip over with this. But yeah, look at the ice storm. It's really cool having these different effects because his powers are very abstract. It's tuning fork to create weather in space. And I think they did a good job replicating that ability in figure form. Now you can see here, Windhammer stands about the same height as Steelwill, a little bit taller than Bluegrass, because we got to not count Bluegrass's hat into the height equation. So you can see he stands pretty good alongside of them. Though I gotta say, he's a little bit easier to play with because he's a lot chunkier. And that does definitely help get through some of the, articulation things that these guys, you gotta do some more positioning. This guy's a lot more solid. Now here he is with his voice actor shared character, Linkso. So you can see that his size compared to a Thundercats figure. Now I spent the least amount of time on him just because he's a much simpler figure than the Silverhawks themselves. But I really like Windhammer. He's really fun. The effect parts are great. I love the hair. This is just a really fun action figure, and he's simpler to use than the others, which I think is why he's just so enjoyable. So of course we saved the best for last. Mon Star Limbo Mob Kingpin. Same sort of packaging as Windhammer, but he is in a much wider box. There he is. Now, the armored version of Mon Star, the one that I think most people know from the original toy, is in Wave 1, and we'll look at him when Wave 1 comes out. But on the back, we got, nice Mon Star art. Mon Star, leader of the Limbo Mob. Mon Star is the head of the Limbo Mob and functions as its local criminal kingpin. He's been around Limbo for over 300 years. He has an above normal strength, but when endowed with the light of the Limbo's Moon Star, that's the Mon Star's Moon Star, Mon Star's body transforms and is entirely covered in robotic armor. His strength becomes many times greater than in his normal state. He has jets on his elbows that he can use to fly through space, as well as fire red energy blasts. His most dangerous ability is the star-like blasts that come from what would normally be his eye patch. He has a personal vendetta against Stargazer and all who align themselves with the Silverhawks. There is an extra wrinkle to this guy. So you may be wondering, oh hey, that's cool they made the pre-transformation Mon Star, but he mostly sits in a chair. Well, it was a separate release, but boom, here's the chair. So the chair is a separate release, which is fine, because if you just want the chair, you can totally just buy the chair. But you can see Transformation Chamber Throne here, and on the back it just shows Mon Star sitting in it. And it is big enough to fit the armored Mon Star as well, and we will test that out once again when Wave 1 comes out. But let's look at the two Mon Star items. So here is Mon Star of Limbo. He is, of course, the main villain of Silverhawks, as we talked about. This guy has actually never had a untransformed figure. Like this look of him, the Kenner line was supposed to have one, and it was canceled. So it's really cool that we finally got a full-on figure. The original Kenner toy actually did have a swappable head feature where it showed this head of Mon Star, but with the armored body. But the actual pre-transformed Mon Star figure never came out. So this is pretty cool. Now, that being said, there is a couple weird things about this guy in his accessory count that we'll look at in a moment. But first of all, he is pretty big. He is not normal size. I usually save the size comparisons. Let's do it now. He's actually, as you can see, quite a bit taller than the Bluegrass and even Steelwill. He is towering, and the armored form's even bigger. But I like that sense of scale is kept, because unlike a lot of 80s cartoons that had larger size characters, Silverhawks actually kept its scale with Mon Star. If he was supposed to be big, he was gonna be big. But I love the head sculpt. This is the neutral one. He does have that kind of looking upward problem that Bluegrass had, but I do love it. The actual, paint work done on the hair is just fantastic. The bodysuit here, it's pretty simple. It's pretty basic. This loincloth thing is sculpted with some extra fur detail. It's more, you know, less animation accurate, more like some of the Thundercats or the Master of the Universe figures. In fact, these hands look like standard Thundercats hands, oddly enough. But you can see that overall the bodysuit is mostly paint. It's very simple on sculpting, but mostly a paint thing. This was just an in-between step. This is the equivalent of the mummy for Mumm-Ra, so, you know, it's pretty much that's what it is. Head-wise, it doesn't move too much. That's because of the giant, big old hair. Shoulders move out a bit. They 360, they bicep, they elbow again, they wrist, they pivot. The torso, once again, has this kind of useless ball joint thing. With Mumm-Ra, with Mon Star, getting already mixed up names. With Mon Star, the actual, like, movement, you can get a little bit out of it, like Bluegrass, so it's not completely useless like Steelwills or Windhammers, but then the waist is completely, there's nothing there. It's just completely solid. Now, that's not a problem because this guy mostly sits, but it's just something to point out. Hips move forward, back, thigh swivel, knee bend, knee swivel, and then ankle forward, back, left, right. He doesn't have any of that paint flaking thing that was going on with the two Silverhawks, which is good. But yes, he does have some different accessories. First things first, head options, because this neutral expression, I don't feel, works the best for this character. Oh, that's more like it. The second head is my favorite to display with. He's got the mouth open like he's barking orders. He's looking straight ahead. You know, eye patch. Hair is whipping. Also, I don't know if you can tell from the partial nerve damage I got here, it's really hard to attach these heads to him because of, you know, when you're grabbing it to push it on the figure, there's a lot of pointy stuff. But look at that. That's really, really good looking. I like that head. And the third head is him starting to transform. He's got his mouth open to recite Moon Star of Limbo. You know, the stuff we'll do when we have the armored one and can make a fancy intro. And then the eye patch is also lit up. This is definitely a transformation head, and we will again do some fancy stuff when Wave 1 drops in May, because yeah, that's pretty cool. So in addition to these default kind of grippy hands, he also comes with 2 fists, and I do want to note, when I was taking out the default hands, I did have to put some low-level heat. I used a hairdryer, just heated around the wrist socket, because once it got past that mushroom peg, they came out pretty easily. But they were kind of stuck in there. So you ever have hands that don't want to pull out, I just low-level hairdryer for like 10 seconds on the wrist, and then you can usually pop them out at that point. Then back on track here, he's got these open hands, which look, I think, a lot cooler than these. These look too relaxed. These are definitely splayed out, ready to like grab something. He's got these 2 finger-pointing hands to bark orders at people, and then there's a bunch of hands I have no idea why he comes with. For some reason, and I don't quite get it, he comes with these 2 open grip hands and this 1 tighter grip hand for nothing. Nothing that comes with him holds, and he doesn't have to hold anything he comes with. Now, I do know why he has these. So Sky Shadow is his Fighting Hawk equivalent, who is like this evil bat. This is a curled up, perched, armored Sky Shadow. The non-perched Sky Shadow in his armored form is with the armored Mon Star. So if you want both Sky Shadow forms, you gotta get both. But then there's this one, which is kind of cool, because this is Sky Shadow before he was turned into a robot. And he actually has a couple articulated wings on ball joints, and his head turns. But I think this fits with, you know, non-armored Mon Star coming with non-armored Sky Shadow. So that's a pretty cool inclusion. All right, here is Mon Star with the mummy version of Mumm-Ra. These are kind of the nice equivalents. Same voice actor for both roles. He did a great job. Earl Hammond was amazing in both shows. But Mon Star, I think Mon Star is more intimidating in his pre-transformation state. Mumm-Ra, people definitely underestimate him when he is the mummy form because he looks frail and old. But Mon Star still is intimidating, and he becomes more intimidating when he gets armored, whereas Mumm-Ra goes from doesn't look that intimidating until he actually, you know, scares you, to the really intimidating ever-living form. So I like that there's these kind of comparisons. They're not exactly the same character, even though they have a similar transformation scheme. So Mon Star is a pretty cool figure on his own. Big, bold, beefy, but like I teased in the packaging segment, that is not all to this figure. Because yes, here is the transformation chamber throne. So Mon Star usually just hangs out in his transformation chamber until he transforms, and he's usually sitting on this throne. The normal Mon Star doesn't go out for parties and stuff. If he's making a house call, he's going to armor up first. So this throne, I think, is an essential part to this figure. But with this throne being sold separately, if you did just want Mon Star without the throne, you totally have that option. And if you wanted just the throne, you have that option too. I love the painted details here, the sculpted details. It looks really, really nice. The nice purple wash on it. And in general, it's got a nice weight to it. It's not hollow. There's these 2 spots here that are kind of hollowed out. But it's pretty solid. It's pretty weighty. It does weigh a good couple pounds. And it sits there on your display. And you can take Mon Star here, and we'll just we'll get him into a sitting position. I kind of like having him sort of spread out in this thing, barking orders at somebody. Because he's usually sitting up like higher than everyone else. So he's looking down on them. And yeah, you can kind of have Mon Star just chilling in his chair. Let's put Sky Shadow like on the armrest there. And boom. That is exactly how I'm going to display this figure, because that is exactly what I wanted. I love it. I love that we got the throne made officially just as a separate release. So that way it didn't overprice Mon Star if you just wanted the figure. But also we're not just looking for third-party options from, you know, fan creations to get the throne. I think this is an essential part to the Mon Star display, and I totally love it. So overall, I think Silverhawks Wave 2 is pretty much a win. There are some limitations to the figures that are slightly annoying. The torso ball joints on pretty much all of them are useless. The paint chipping that happened on Bluegrass is unfortunate, and some of it on Steelwill. Those are just things that happen when you paint a figure a lot, and I wish there was a way around that, but I haven't seen any company figure that out yet. Windhammer's great, Mon Star's great. I really don't have any complaints with either of them, outside of Mon Star including hands that seemingly go to nothing. I just really do like this wave, and I'm looking forward to getting Wave 1 and Wave 3 and beyond, because I think we'll at least get the core Silverhawks and core mobsters from Mon Star. So hopefully, you know, the line keeps going to complete those main teams. I'm pretty sure it will. I'm pretty happy with these, though for some people, some of the articulation cuts is just going to be a deal breaker. For me, it's not, because at the moment, with the 4 figures we got, I can pose them how I want to pose them, and the articulation hasn't gotten in the way of that. And that, I think, is the important part. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a long one, but if you haven't checked out any of my Thundercats reviews for Super 7 Ultimates, I just did the Thunder Tank and Mandora and all the previous waves. Go check out the playlist. That's now a Thundercats/Silverhawks playlist. I'm going to keep these kind of close together. And if you enjoyed this, hit the like button, hit the comment, and tell me what's your favorite figure of the wave or figure that you're looking forward to with Silverhawks. Or if you never heard of Silverhawks, ask me a question about it. I'll answer. And also hit the subscribe button, notification bell, because we will be reviewing the entire line from here to the end, because that's just how I do things. So hopefully the videos do well and help support that. Also be sure to check out my live streams Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about toys, Blu-rays, and all kinds of cool stuff. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Soundout12, as well as my graphic designer on Twitter at DarkClaw643. You can also check out Hero Club at hero-club.com for news and interviews and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.